Hey guys, Danny here, and today we're going to finally start bringing this X5 back to life. As you can see, it's been sitting here back here in my backyard for quite a while. It's covered in bird shit. It's dirty as heck. Yeah, the sun has not been good to this car. But hopefully the paint is still alright. It's only been sitting out here for a couple months now. Surprisingly, the rear air suspension hasn't sagged too much compared to the front, so that's a good sign. So the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to remove that transfer case. It's bad, and I have a new transfer case on the way. So let's get that one out. And I'm going to use that jack over there. And we're going to try to jack this up. I'm not sure how that's going to work on grapple, but we'll give that a shot. Slight change of plans. So jacking up the X5 didn't work out as well as I thought, you know, because who knew that gravel was a bad surface to jack up on. The jack here kept just sinking in, and I could not get the jack stands to be stable. So instead of trying to lift it up there and work on it there while I'll kill myself, I'm going to do this old trick where I use my wagon to tow it, and I'm going to try and get it back out onto the carport. That way it'll be on hard ground. The car looks really nice now, actually. It's funny. But yeah, we'll see how well it handles it this time. Last time it did it pretty okay. And now the X5 is gone. It's almost like magic, huh? I used my big red tractor to tow it out. It's funny, I've been doing more towing with this 540 than I have with the X5. And I actually bought the X5 to tow with originally, so I don't know, is that irony? Oh well. Tell you what though, V8 torque makes all this easy. Now I guess we'll be jacking up the front and the back, and then we will go from there. Alright, well now as you can see, the X5 is all jacked up. It's on 4 jack stands, and it's in the carport here, so I have some shade. I made sure to use the 6-ton jack stands from Harbor Freight, just because you can never be too secure when you're jacking up something this big and heavy. Apologies in advance if the angles are kind of stupid, but this here is the transfer case. This right there, that's the transfer case. That's what we're going to be removing today. As you can see here, there's this support bar that holds it in place. So, to gain access to that, we're going to have to do a little bit more work. We're going to have to remove the exhaust on this side, and the exhaust on this side, and a little bit of it to the back. Thankfully, there's a joint right there, so unlike with the 540i Touring, I don't have to drop the entire super heavy exhaust with the mufflers and all that. I just drop this middle section and I should be good. So we're going to start with that. Those are 12mm bolts. Alright, so I've removed the section of the exhaust here from pretty much the headers all the way to where the back mufflers connect. Thankfully, it's a 2-piece design as opposed to the horrible 1-piece design in my Touring, but that was still quite the doozy to get out. That still weighed like 60 or 70 pounds. So this is the middle of the exhaust. Those are the 2 cats there, and then that is the resonator there. You can see the pre and post cat O2 sensors. Yeah, eventually I want to get that resonator cut out and put an X pipe in there, save some weight, make some more noise too. But yeah, funny thing about this is, and BMW exhausts in general, is that they feel completely tight and secure up until the very, very last bolt. I had all but one bolt removed, And when I removed that last bolt, the whole thing just fell down on me. It didn't feel loose at all prior to that, so it's kind of funny how tightly BMW engineers these things. I also broke a stud, and I'll have to replace that, but it's okay because I have a couple extra studs in my extra spare parts box. Okay, so next step will be just removing all that heat shielding underneath, which should be mercifully easy after this nightmare of a exhaust removal. Alright, so the heat shields are now removed and we have access to these transmission cross member right there. And right here. There's some pretty big bolts holding these on. There's 3 on each side, I think, plus a very long bolt that goes right through. There's like a bushing that supports the transmission and transfer case. But before we can remove that, we've got to support the transmission. So to do that, I'm going to use a jack with a bit of wood on it and just prop the transmission up. Alright, as you can see there, now we've got the transmission supported by this jack here with a piece of wood. Now we can start taking these 16mm bolts off. There's 3 on each side there, and then a giant bolt here. Which I guess we should probably start with this big bolt first, and then maybe move on to the rest. Or actually, I'm not even sure which way to go. Alright, so now we've got the cross member removed. 3 bolts there, 3 bolts there, and a very long bolt that goes through this. Now, curiously enough, this is a rubber bushing, but it's not it's not a serviceable part, or at least, according to BMW. This is still original at 214,000 miles, and it's got no cracking or anything. So this is actually a lifetime part, so you don't have to worry about this. But pro tip: when you're taking down this cross member, loosen the bolt in this bushing first, because when the cross member is loose on both sides, you're not going to have much leverage to break it loose. I learned that the hard way, so I had to thread a bolt or 2 into the cross member to keep it stable while I loosen that bolt up. And it is a very long bolt, as you can see right there. Yeah, it's that long bolt there. And this is what the cross member looks like. Sorry I'm not getting the best angles. It is quite tight under here. And I have a lot of lights going to keep things visible. But yeah, that's it. So it's big. It's big and heavy, so be careful. But it's pretty straightforward. And yeah, as you can see here, I have maybe about 1.5 feet, 2 feet of space from the ground to the underside, so not too much room to work with. So next step is going to be unbolting these bolts at the transmission flex disc, also known as the gleebo. We're going to undo those bolts and then undo. Oh crap! This is too close, but we're going to undo these bolts here at this center shaft bearing, CSB as they call it. We're going to undo these too, and then with that we should be able to pull the drive shaft right off of the output here, and that'll enable us to lower this whole transfer case down enough to get the bolts at the top, because I don't know how you can see, but there are some really hard to access bolts up top there. So we definitely want to be able to lower this down a bit, get more room to work with. And the drive shaft's going to prevent the transfer case from coming out anyways, so it's got to come out. Some guides say to remove the drive shaft front and back completely. I'm going to try and do this with just the front and the middle loosened up. Maybe I could slip it out. I really don't want to undo the back, but I mean I could, but I don't want to. So let's get to it. Alright, so slight change of plans there. I decided that while the transfer case is still reasonably secure, I'm going to drain the fluid out of it, just to make life a little bit easier later, because I don't want to have to do this when the transfer case is already out. It's a lot easier while it's hanging here. So I've already cracked the bolt loose. It's a 17mm bolt, and let's normally if you're just changing the fluid, you want to crack the fill hole first, but since we're not putting this transfer case back in, it doesn't really matter. Let's get all that nasty fluid out of here. Let's hope it doesn't make too much of a mess. Oh, actually that doesn't look bad at all. It's got this nice reddish hue to it. Not bad. And there's not much in there. There's like maybe a quart and a half maybe. Alright, so now with the fluid drained out, we're moving on to the next step, which is to remove these bolts at the gleebo. And these are 18 millimeters front and back with a nut. So I'm going to counter hold with an open wrench, and then I'm going to use this crazy heavy duty, let me see, here we go, this crazy heavy duty Mac Tools impact gun. It's 20 volts and it is so powerful the gun practically moves in my hand. So this thing has enough torque to break open the crank bolt on one of these, so I think it should handle that no problem. Alright, so now we've removed all of the bolts at the gleebo flex disc, and I actually didn't end up needing the impact gun because the bolts weren't super tight, so I just broke them loose with a simple, 3/4 inch breaker bar and a 18 millimeter wrench. It wasn't too bad at all, I guess, because the transmission was, rebuilt recently. Now the next step is going to be to remove this bolts here at this center shaft bearing. And as you can see, I've used a Sharpie and marked off the areas around the bolts on both sides. I always have scratched, stuff in the dirt. That way I'll know how to preload this when I put it back together. But for now, I think these are two 13 millimeter bolts. I'm going to take these off, and then we're hopefully going to be able to just wiggle this thing right out. Alright, so now the drive shaft is loose. See? After I loosened the CSB, it all came out pretty easily. I'm using a jack to help support this so it doesn't put too much stress on that CV joint back there. There's a U joint there, so it's fine if it bends in the middle, but you don't want to put too much stress on the joint back there because that could go bad. So this will keep it up, relatively stable for now. But cool thing is, you can actually see how this works. See, this spins there, and that spins there. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so I started actually trying to remove some of these bolts right here, and turns out, yeah, I could just get them with the standard E-Torx. The E-Torx size we're using here is E14. That removes all these bolts, and these are all loosening them up. So that'll be the next step, and I'm gonna loosen up as many as I can right now, and then I'm gonna lower this whole thing a little bit, and that'll give me access to the upper bolts. And then once those are loose, I should be able to pull this whole thing right out. So that's pretty exciting. Oh yeah, you know what that is? That's a transfer case. Know where it is? On the ground. That's it's the back of the transmission. It's the output shaft. It's pretty cool, pretty dirty. I don't know why I just touched it. I'm just really happy I got this whole thing out. So after I undid the bolts, it came out surprisingly easy. I mean, this thing has been serviced pretty recently by the previous owner, so I assume that's why everything was kind of easy. Though one thing that really perplexed me is that one of the bolts on this transfer case here was a 17 mil. So somebody was a little bit careless in their repair and probably lost a bolt, and there was 17 in there. That was fun to get out because it was the bolt that was there at the very, very top. Alright, so now that this is out, the next episode we're going to be cracking this thing open, taking a look at the insides, comparing it to the newer one, and then putting it all back together. So thanks for watching. Do what you got to do, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.